I tased myself in the balls once. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Around Comics. That's right, your favorite comic book podcast every Tuesday live on YouTube and occasionally after that as well. I'm Brian Salazar. With me, as always, is Christopher Niesman. How are you, pal?
Good. Is that why we say you have an electric personality?
Shocking. I'm a shock.
What a way to go, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
It's
do they
an
still do the
interesting
Darwin
epitaph.
Awards every year? They do the Darwin Awards,
I would
right?
imagine, sure.
That's got to be a top tenner.
It's got to be on there, yeah, absolutely. But hey, man, I know what it's like. I've been there. Hey, before we get too deep into things, I do want to let everyone know from the top. While we finally have done it, we've sold out. We're giving in to the man. We're gonna try and basically, rape all of our listeners for as much cash as we possibly can. We created a Patreon page, patreon.com.
Sell out. You sell out.
Patreon.com/aroundcomics. You can go there if you would like to help support the show. We're going to be doing some interesting things on there. I already have the first Future Stacks episode up there. I'm going to be doing that weekly, just a sort of weekly look at comics that are coming out and things that I think might be interesting to keep your eyes on when you go to the comic shop during the week. So those are going to come out hopefully every Sunday. So you have a few days before New Comic Book Day. And yeah, it's just that's going to be one thing. But I know you're working on some stuff, Chris. And
I'm gonna have some visits with some old friends and new friends, and put my interview hat back on. There'll be some Patreon exclusive interviews. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and this is just additional content. This podcast, the regular Tuesday episode, Tuesday/Wednesday episode, will still be the same thing that we always do. We're just going to do some additional stuff, and hopefully maybe enough people back what we're doing, and we'll try and do some stretch goals maybe, and do some fun things with some of the cash, the cold hard cash you fuckers are finally gonna
mostly just pay our hosting fees.
Mostly, yeah. That's just mostly what we need to do. But no, hopefully we'll get some people interested. But we have a long time listener base. You guys, we've been doing this podcast for a long time, on and off. Obviously, I think we're in a pretty stable, point in around comics time right now, and we're all having fun doing it. So I kept pushing the Patreon as the idea of let's do more content, and at least it gives us the incentive to do more, because we're all kind of we want this to be fun. We don't want this to be a chore, and that was always the thing coming back. But people, hopefully will enjoy what we do extra. And yeah, if you want to support the show, you can also just support the show. There's a $3 a month thing you can get where you don't get anything extra. You're just helping us out if you'd like to do that. But there's also some other membership levels there. So go to patreon.com/aroundcomics if you'd like to help support the greatest comic book podcast the world has ever known.
It's the greatest podcast in the multiverse, isn't it?
It's the greatest. Yeah, that's right. We are the greatest.
Come on. Don't lose the tagline. IPs are important, which we're going to get into.
Anonymous Facebook user has a point here on a comment. It's not selling out unless you make money. That's for sure.
True. I'll make a deal with everyone. If I hit the Powerball numbers this week, the Patreon is off. I will
you will fund
this podcast forever.
It'll be ad free and
actually I'll be disappointed if I don't win both of them. Because I'm buying Mega Millions and Powerball tickets. Well, I'm in it for both of them.
I'm sure you'll do it. There's no, the odds are you will win, aren't they? No, probably not.
No.
Odds are not in your
especially favor. Now that I've talked about it. So we got that. We're waiting for Tom here for a couple minutes. I think he's getting the kids to bed, but we're going to be talking about the Punisher and some of the events of the past week without going down a big political rant and rabbit hole. I don't think that any of us have ever shied away from letting our political beliefs that at least be a little bit known, but we're not gonna dwell on that insanity from last week more than we have to. So before Tom gets here, I just want to remember or remind people that they can contact the show by reaching out to us at info@aroundcomics.com. You can hit us up on Facebook whenever we are doing live shows, which is every Tuesday at about 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, and we always love your input before, during, or after shows. So please do that. Oh, here comes Georgia.
Here's your dog. Here's another dog. So the Punisher thing, we're gonna, obviously this episode we're gonna talk a little bit about the whole Punisher controversy or what it is, but it's funny. So kind of it started with me this week. Jamal, our friend of the program, friend of ours, Jamal Eigel, had posted, and I think he was kind of the spark of this week's reason that the whole Punisher thing, kind of came up again on Twitter. He had posted about how he thinks it's time for for Marvel to do away with the Punisher, and I responded back, just being my normal sort of
combative,
not competitive. No, and here's the thing: I love this is what I love about Jamal is, well, one, he's really smart. He has great ideas.
Jamal's super smart. Yep.
He's super passionate, but he doesn't let his passion like overshadow the fact that he knows who I am. So even though I was disagreeing with him, like it was just a conversation between two dudes that know each other pretty well and respect one another, and we're not trying to shit on each other. We're just going back and forth and discussing things, and that was great. And I've been thinking about it since that conversation. But the funny thing is that whenever one of these conversations, and I think it's Jamal is part of the reason as well, is that because it was in his Twitter feed, and I think he just sort of at this point kind of he's a marked man to some degree by the the sort of right wing comic book fans.
Oh, because he's been very
vocal,
very vocal,
absolutely.
Very outspoken. He was at the, and I want to stop using military terms and that kind of bullshit, but he was at the front lines against the Comicsgate folks, kind of from the beginning. Drew a line in the sand and said,
absolutely.
No, it's wrong. What you're doing is bullshit, and this is why.
So, but when someone like me goes and argues with him and sort of counterpoints his points about something like this, all of a sudden, like the nut jobs come out of the woodwork and they start like trying to help my argument. Oh, and God, I'm sitting there going, yeah, I don't need your help, guys. I'm not on your side, But then it's funny because there's two sides. Then there's also the very, sort of liberal fans, or just maybe fans of Jamal, who then sort of start taking pot shots at me. Oh, and I'm like, listen, I'm not going to reply because I don't really need to argue with a stranger. I have plenty of people that I know. I don't need your help,
and I'm not going to waste my time arguing with you.
It's kind of funny. It's just like both sides. I have to confuse people a lot because I am very liberal and vocal about being liberal, but I also, there's times where I don't agree with people in the comics industry that are very liberal, and I will argue against certain things that I just think don't make sense or I just don't agree with. And it gets me like pushed into this category of like, oh, well, he must be this, or
you're kind of a George Carlin liberal.
Yeah. Fuck everybody.
It's like, yeah, okay, there's right and there's wrong, but you fucking calm down.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I am. Hey, Tom, there's Tom.
Hey, what's up?
What's going on, man? We were just talking
Tom liberals more scrawny every week.
I haven't trimmed this beard in a long time.
I mean, we're entering Ted Kaczynski territory here.
You can take the boy out of Green Bay, but you cannot take the Green Bay out of the boy.
Definitely.
Yeah. Is it cold in the basement this week?
Yes, it is.
You're bundled up.
The heater is very warm in here. The heater is very loud.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna turn it on.
I can't hear it. I don't hear it.
It's not on right now. It's not on.
I gotcha. I got mine on because I'm just like, It's freezing down here. I got to put it on for a little while at least. All right, I could put more clothes on.
Staying on Wisconsin, there was a magazine. I forget who it was. It may have been like Gentleman's. It may have been like
Vogue.
And they were talking about. They had an article. The gist of it was the old fashioned is dead. That no one drinks old fashions anymore.
What?
And like the next month, they had like basically a retraction that says, "Wisconsin, we heard you. We had no idea."
A brandy old fashioned.
Yeah,
is a much different experience than your traditional
Old fashioned.
What you would,
I remember the first time I ordered an old fashioned. The first time I ordered an old fashioned in Wisconsin, went to a bar here in Wauwatosa, and the only question they ever ask you is it's not bourbon or brandy, because it's always brandy here. The only question they ask you is sour or sweet, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I figured I was going to get an old fashioned, and I ordered a sour old fashioned. No, the gal drops a freaking pint glass in front of me, old fashioned in a pipe, and I'm just like, God, I love Wisconsin.
Yeah, big old. I'm more of a sweet man myself.
Oh, you're a sweet old fashioned. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta get some 7-Up, some brandy,
Shout out to the Manitowoc Minute if you ever want to learn how to make a true brandy old fashioned. It's the guy at Manitowoc Minute does a great walkthrough of it.
That sounds like something that used to be on the Johnny B show back in the day, back in the 80s.
Manitowoc Minute. It's awesome. All right.
All right. Are we ready to talk about some comics or something comic related?
So without getting into all of the garbage that happened at the Capitol last week, which everyone knows, basically
what happened last?
Yeah, really.
What happened?
Something happened?
As Sal was talking about, and I even read it in an AP report, which was kind of weird. Whenever your comics get into your news,
you got fascism. Comics in my reality.
Yeah, it was definitely a.
Did you say in your fascism?
Yeah, when you get a little bit of you got your comics in my fascism. You got your fascism.
Exactly what happened. But they were talking about a lot of the symbols that were being brandished and bandied about at the insurrection, and from Confederate flag to the Don't Tread on Me, and then the insurrection, and then they and mentioned Punisher, the Punisher logo.
This is going to be the easiest bear poking that I've ever done in my life today. This is going to be Chris is like, I'm not going down a political rant with this. I'm just going to okay, we'll see how that goes.
I'm just calling it what it was. But yeah, it's so what is maybe we should talk about it first. What is it about the Punisher and the Punisher logo that is so appealing to people that are just not quite right?
Well, I mean, I think it's appealing to a lot of people. I mean, I like the Punisher logo. I have
I think I saw it last time we whenever we met in Chicago a month or so ago. I think you were wearing a Punisher shirt.
Yeah, I have a couple of Punisher shirts. I think I have a button somewhere. I have a sticker on my car. I like the character. Cool. Yeah, it looks cool. He is absolutely a. I mean, the Punisher was basically just, Death Wish, in comic book form. It's a revenge fantasy. It's, at a time, I think or I don't think it was necessarily at a time, but in the 70s, certainly Death Wish came out at a time where there was a lot of kind of like lawlessness in big cities. New York, I think specifically, Times Square was kind of a fucking maniac haven, and a lot of crime going on, and between drug dealing and mob crime and all that shit. And I think your average sort of American was pretty fucking frightened by that shit, and didn't necessarily trust the courts to
welcome the idea of an armed vigilante to clean up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantasy, though. I mean, that's the thing. It's fiction. It's a fantasy, and most people myself included, understand that it's like I can sit here and as a father and sit here and go, listen, if somebody did something to my kids, I would absolutely murder them. But the reality of me doing that is a completely different thing. You know what I mean? Like the fantasy that the Punisher might give someone of justice is going to be served, one way or another, and it should be, is a nice fantasy.
Yeah.
It's the same fantasy, and it's the other side of the coin of hey, if Superman existed and saved kittens out of trees, that's a nice fantasy. But they're all just fantasies. But I think you have certainly people that, and we are seeing more and more of that, these sort of paramilitary fucking lunatics that they're not far off from comic book nerds in a lot of ways, where it's just
is still
they're living through this fantasy, and we've seen it when people take it too far, when they don't understand the line between fantasy or fiction and reality, and that starts to blend, and especially I think when people, these dudes that have never been in a fight, have never really done anything, brave or noble or that kind of, in reality, but they have these fantasies of, sort of delusions of grandeur, that there's some sort of savior, that they're protecting the country, that there's some sort of patriot. So I think that all plays into it with the fantasy, with the Punisher.
Yeah. It's funny. I would talk to Mark Beatty, owner of Dark Tower Comics, back when we recorded there, years ago, and the co-owner before Mark bought out the store, the guy was a cop. He was a Chicago cop that owned the comic shop.
I remember him. Yeah, what was his name?
Oh, was it
Mark? Was it Mark?
I think it was another Mark. Yeah,
it might have been another Mark, right?
Yeah,
it's something like that.
It was Mike, I believe.
Mike.
And there would be other cops that, because of that, would get their comics at a lot of cops are comic book fans. And I remember talking to Mark, and I was like, "Oh yeah, really? So there's a few cops that come in here every week." Goes, yeah, pretty much. I was like, "What do they read?" He's like, "Punisher." They all read the Punisher, every one of them.
Yeah, well, I think cops are probably, cops are probably as frustrated with the judicial system as anyone. You know what I mean? I know cops. I train with cops. I have known a handful of different police officers over the years, and they definitely have a certain fantasy in their life too. They certainly have, not delusions, but they have ideas of who they are.
Yeah.
And why they become cops plays into that. Now I think trying to go back to sort of this whole controversy. I think there are two different things though. I think because there have been instances where police officers are wearing this stuff and they have it, they have a Punisher patch on their uniform, or their cars have the Punisher logo on it, that kind of thing. And then you have, just your average everyday paramilitary nut job storming the Capitol wearing it. And I think those are two different instances. I mean, two different sort of things. I don't want to necessarily clump them together as one thing.
Some of the paramilitary nutsos were off-duty police officers.
Yeah. So agreed. I mean, I'm not. I'm not saying that there's not. But my point is that I think you have to look at two different things separately if you're Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you're Marvel Comics and it's okay, well, you have police officers putting this on their car. Well, that's something we can absolutely stop from happening. That shouldn't happen. A police officer should not look at the Punisher as the way to be you know what I mean? And they're paid, not a role model, and they're paid by taxpayers' dollars. So that is not their job. That is not who they should represent as a public servant.
Mm-hmm.
But a private citizen wearing it, no matter what they're doing, is a completely separate issue. I think both legally and morally, I think it's two separate issues.
Well, I think even stepping back farther than that, it's not just Marvel. I mean, it's Disney bought Marvel for a reason, and it wasn't to publish comic books. It was to own those IPs, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So the Punisher is an IP that someone at Disney has a number that says this IP is worth this, because that was part of that negotiation.
Sure they do. Sure,
that is an IP that is worth, we'll say, $18 million is what the value of the Punisher IP is worth. And so that is their property, and they, as a corporation, protect that property. We're talking about a corporation that would tell daycares to take Disney characters off of their walls if they had done that without permission from Disney. I mean, they protect their IPs really, really staunchly. And I think that part of this argument is about that IP being circumvented. Okay, the people using that imagery of the Punisher to create logos and patches without paying Disney to do that. Not that Disney would license it, but that's a licensed property. And so, I mean, there's certainly that business side of it.
But that exists for probably all of their characters. I mean,
for sure. And that's part of
they can't. Even Disney, with as many lawyers as they have and as many billions of dollars they have, I don't think they could stop everyone from creating knockoff, merchandise that exists.
Yeah,
but it's nearly impossible.
There are people there that is their job, is to stop IP.
I understand it, but it's also a cost benefit, analysis of like, is this worth trying to stop?
Yeah.
Or not. And I'm not, okay, before we go down that, my question is, what is the problem with police officers is one thing. I agree. Like, I don't think police officers should have it on their uniform. I don't think that they should have it in their cars or vehicles, anything like that. I don't think the police should be associated with
glorifying and non-vigilante.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
It's weird. It's weird to have.
Absolutely weird.
I can understand.
I don't think most police officers that do it are doing it even with a brief understanding of who the Punisher is. You know what I mean? Maybe they watch the TV show. You know what I mean? And in the TV show, he's not nearly as much of a
maybe they're big
homicidal.
Maybe they're just big Thomas Jane fans.
That could be, or Dolph Lundgren. I don't know. But my question is, okay, take the police officer thing out of it, because I agree with that. Like, and that should be. I mean, that should be like, if my town, the town I lived in, if I saw a cop car roll by with that on, I would go complain to the chief of police. You know what I mean? Like, that's,
like, why are you decorating?
Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah. But I haven't seen that in my town, but Okay. So separate that for a moment, and let's focus a little bit more on the sort of wing nuts, that we saw this past weekend, and just people in general doing bad things that might be wearing a Punisher shirt or a Punisher patch. What is the problem with that we're trying to solve? Because the question is, should Marvel stop producing Punisher products? Should they, sort of disavow themselves of the Punisher because idiots are wearing Punisher? And my question is, well, what are you trying to solve with that?
Yeah.
What is the problem? Because the only problem is your feelings. Like, you don't want to be associated with Marvel because some asswipe storms the Capitol wearing a Punisher patch.
It's also like too late.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
like, I can Google the Punisher logo and make a T-shirt on my own. Here's like a certain level of like.
Go ahead.
I mean, I get it. I get why people are frustrated. We're living through a time where it definitely does feel like you wish someone could do something about these things, right? You know, like, and it feels very like I wish there was consequences, or I wish I could control this or that. I mean, so I get the urge,
frustration,
the frustration, yeah, because it feels like what can you do? Like, what can anyone do about any of this? And
Here's my question is, how many of the people that go and try and topple governments that wear the Punisher patch, how many of them read the Punisher?
I had no idea. It's impossible to say. I mean, how many of them even exist? You know what I mean? Like, there was like one dude wearing a Punisher patch.
Show, movies. It's so stopping publishing of the comic books. Is it going to help the situation? Is it going to stop it?
Well, that was my point. Like, is it because going back to the discussion I had with Jamal about it, you know, because he's like, I don't. His first post on Twitter about it was sort of like saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, I don't say this easily, but I think it's time that Marvel does away with the Punisher. That's not exactly what he said, but it's something like basically that's
the gist of it. Yeah,
the gist of it. And my thing was like, well, if that's your solution, what is the problem? Because if is the problem that you think the Punisher is creating these dudes or in some way influencing them, and do you think getting rid of the Punisher is going to stop that? Or is it just you don't like the fact that somebody's playing with your toys in a way that you don't like them playing with them? You know what I mean? Like, to me, it seems like a lot of it is just this emotion of fans being like, well, I don't want to be associated with Marvel now because so I can't really do anything about it other than try and put pressure on Marvel to do away with this character. And what is that really going to do? I mean, at the end of the day, are you just trying to make yourself feel better about liking Marvel comics and liking comics? And you know what I mean? And I understand Jamal probably has a different thought process on this than I ever will, being a comic book creator that is, worked on these characters and worked in the industry for years and years and years. And being from New York is a completely different thing from where I grew up, I think, and being black, a completely different, life experience than I will ever have. So I can't quite understand him from that perspective, but I'm trying to figure out the people that are calling for this, and I don't mean to put it all on him, but the people that are calling for this, because it's now sort of growing legs and it's gathering steam, and people are now putting pressure on Marvel. And it's this whole, sort of thing of like, well, we can't really do anything to the people that are doing the bad things, so let's blame Marvel and make them react. And it just seems so strange to me.
Here's my thing is that I love that character. I am balanced enough in the head to not let my enjoyment of that character, who is a broken, messed up individual, who is a very interesting character in interesting stories. But I don't idolize that character. But I love reading Frank Castle stories.
Right.
I love reading Punisher stories. Garth Ennis's run on Punisher, some of my favorite comics of all time. Because that symbol has been appropriated by a bunch of racist, malcontent assholes, does that mean the answer to that is to take away something that I enjoy and, hundreds of thousands of other people can read and yet not go try and topple a government, because
right.
So there is a very selfish, and I understand my own privilege, but there's a very selfish anger in me that is, why am I being punished as someone who enjoys reading that character because that dickhead thought the logo is cool and decided to go and do something stupid.
Absolutely. I think that absolutely. I feel the same way of just like, there's way more people that can read and have read the Punisher comics for years and years and years and don't go and do horrific treasonous acts with the logo on them.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think that Marvel has a responsibility to be very outspoken about condemning that
Well,
violence.
they have though. They have in the past. I mean, they have. I mean, that's the thing.
Do so.
I just don't understand. To me, it's like, okay, well then where does it end? Because you have characters like Wolverine and Deadpool, and on DC you have, I mean, they've made a fucking hero out of, well, Batman, I mean, in the movies,
Batman is
Superman.
Batman
Well, he doesn't murder. I mean, he has, but he doesn't.
Jason Todd. He's murdering
Jason
people all
Todd.
the time.
But
No,
Harley Quinn is one of the biggest fucking characters at DC. She's literally a psychopath that has murdered for years, but it's now she's cute and everybody loves her. But so it's like that's okay. So that's my thing. Is like I don't understand. I mean, I get the frustration with it to a certain. I don't want to be associated.
Start eliminating all of the anti-heroes in their comics.
Right.
The comic book shelves are going to be really bare really soon.
I mean, people keep bringing up, well, his time has passed. The idea of a Punisher type character is over. And it's like, really? Like anti-heroes, like that type of character is over now? That's where we're at? Why is that?
This came out, what, 2.5 months ago?
Yeah.
It's great. It's awesome. It's an awesome book.
That's what I mean. I mean, I don't know. I don't agree with necessarily the idea of calling on Marvel. I mean, why are they responsible for what other people are doing with their,
I think it's also an overestimation of the power of the Punisher comic book.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, it'd be one thing if you felt like the Punisher, for some reason, the Punisher comic was creating all these things, and it was like a case where it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing, shouldn't be putting this out. But I mean, like it or not, people have, unsavory people who don't, who don't believe in the rule of law, who've gravitated towards using the Punisher, and now it's too late. Like that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, I don't think
the Nazis didn't invent the swastika, right? But you don't see it.
They just ruined it. God damn it!
Yeah, they ruined it. Like
maybe it's the logo that gets fired, not the character, right?
Yeah, or you just like.
But do you think that's gonna like? What are you going to accomplish with that though? You're not going to.
It's a symbol. I mean, logo is a symbol.
But they're not going to stop using it. I'm not gonna. You could.
Never
publish
that genie's out of the bottle. So even if they cancel all the comics, and Tom's right, it probably wouldn't have an effect. That logo is a part of the zeitgeist now. There are people that have never even seen a comic book that
with
know
cool
that
skull logo. Yeah, they don't. That's what I think. I think most of these guys don't even know who the fucking Punisher is. No. I think that's a kick-ass logo, and it's badass looking, and I want to be a badass. So I'm gonna slap it.
And if they know anything about the Punisher, it's like, he gets to shoot whoever he wants. He doesn't have to follow, the rules. Like it's like I said, people are frustrated because it's like, if I liked the Punisher a lot, would I walk around in a fucking Punisher logo T-shirt now? No, 0% chance, right? That's
I will. I don't give a shit.
But you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden now, this thing that you love, you don't control what people think of it at all anymore, and it's
but you never did.
Now it's like become this thing that's just like I
think. I mean, that brings up another point though. Like if Marvel stops publishing Punisher stories, doesn't that take away any chance to actually sort of say, no, this is what the Punisher is, or this is what, you know what I mean? Like,
but the Punisher is a fucking psychopath.
But he doesn't have. I mean,
sometimes.
So here's one of the options I've heard floated out there is that maybe not getting rid of the property, but maybe it's time to retire Frank Castle.
What does that do?
To bring in another character,
another Punisher.
Do you think Frank Castle has to be a psychopath though? right? Like a psychopath.
I don't think he's a psychopath. I think he's very driven. He just the only, like you said, the only difference between him and Batman is he'll kill because he wants revenge for his family.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a father who's fucked up because he feels that, to me, the Punisher it's guilt. He was not able to stop his family he wasn't able to protect his family. As a father, that is the most horrible, like, sentence you could give someone, you know what I mean? Like, if you felt like you could not protect your family, that would drive you a little crazy. And it has with Frank. It's driven him for years to take out his pain on scumbags. And we used to not have a problem with, like, fictional scumbags being killed, but now
we also used to be able to figure out what's real and what's not.
Yes, this is true.
and now that is the line between knowing what's real and what's not is very blurred.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
there's I just want to. There's some good comments going on. Neil Johnson said a Joker shot up a movie theater. It's like, yeah, like Joker was the most popular comic book movie ever. It made $1 billion, and it's about a fucking psycho, lunatic, literal crazy person, murdering people.
Yeah, it's just
But nobody's calling for the Joker to be fucking shut down. Why is
Imagine if the cops, if you saw a cop car roll up with like a Joker car.
Ha kids!
Life is meaningless.
Do you think part of the calls to Marvel obviously, that no one, if it was Spider-Man badges, or Captain America badges, if they had tried to take over
there's a Captain America
shield somewhere, that Marvel would be like, fucking pound sand. We're not getting rid of these characters.
Right. Yeah, nobody's calling for Superman to get fucking
They save money by getting rid of the Punisher comic book.
do you think part of it is that
they're like,
second tier character, that it makes it a little bit more of an easy target to say, oh, it's not really that important to your bottom line, so you should just get rid of it? Do you think that's
probably? I mean, I think that's part of it, is that he's not. I mean, the Punisher is, he's not a top tier character. Nobody's, I mean, I'll be honest, like, if Marvel never published another Punisher comic book, I'm not going to cry.
Yeah, I mean,
like, whatever. There's plenty of comics for me to read.
Like, come on, Sal. There would be a Punisher-sized hole in your heart. And
but here's it. I'm not going to stop wearing a Punisher T-shirt because all of a sudden Marvel has, is trying to enforce some morality on me that I don't need. You know what I mean? And here's my other argument about this whole thing too. Everybody keeps saying, okay, it's the symbol. It's the symbol. We have Jay Hood Creative. He is a comment here. It's like, it's less about the Punisher causing the problem than Marvel's brand being touted by unsavory characters. It's not the character, it's the skull symbol. Okay, but by that rationale, the United States should stop using the American flag as its symbol, because every one of them wears a fucking flag or incorporates a flag on their uniform as well. So are we going to stop using the American flag because some people are fucking idiots?
It's just the skull is now a thing that fascists wear sometimes.
I'm okay with it. I'm all right.
Yeah, it's just what it is.
It's funny.
That's what
so my daughter last year was still playing softball. She had like her last year of softball, and my wife had bought her because it was really hot. It was summer, and she had bought her like this little spray thing where you pump it and it's sprays like a cool mist air for the team. But my wife just went to the store and bought one. She didn't think about it, but it was, and she didn't know what it was, but it was a Blue Lives Matter flag wrapped around it.
Problematic. Like, you just
and my daughter's like giving her a hard time about it, and Kim's like, "What? I can't support the police." And it is this weird thing of like, she's not, trying to make a statement, with this stupid water bottle, but Everything's a fucking statement.
Next week she was open carrying.
At the games. Kim had an AK-47 and she was
she had her hashtag stop the steal
22.
water.
A little backup in her, in her sock. In her boot.
I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not against going after, Marvel going after anyone and trying to protect their copyright. That's certainly their, right to do so. And like I said, with cops, I think that's absolutely anyone.
Here's what they do. They just bring back the TV show. They put it on Disney Plus, and Frank Castle spends the next season hunting down Trump supporters.
Yeah, I don't think you could do that either.
The ground, man, one after the other.
But here's the problem. So
I will probably wear that Punisher shirt.
See, but why is that okay? Every Trump
not
supporter
okay.
deserves
It's
to be
not
murdered.
okay.
Yeah, not real. versus real.
No, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird thing for sure. Okay, here's a question by J Hood. J Hood Creative seems to be very into this conversation. He said, "Well, what would you think if a cop wore a Confederate flag T-shirt in his off hours? Same thing as wearing a skull shirt, or no?" I don't have any right to tell a private citizen what they should or shouldn't wear. What I think about it, he's probably a douchebag. I don't really want to hang out with him.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be his buddy, but I'm not going to call up the police, station and say, "Hey, this guy is wearing a Confederate flag."
We'll have to rank our red flag thing, right? Confederate flag. It's like up here, like that is
swastika.
Yeah, it's swastika, Confederate flag. I'll put those pretty equal as far as like
swastika. Yeah, but what if they're just a Dukes of Hazzard fan? What if they're just a big?
It's too long. You've had too long. No.
What if I'm just like a big Leonard Skinner fan,
no,
dude?
also
I want free
other
birds.
options. There's
what about a Leonard Skinner T-shirt?
A Leonard Skinner T-shirt with the, I mean, that could be a red flag, but it also could just be a dude you could score weed off of back in the day. When
it also, it's like when you got, those are your apex, like you see those
apex predator.
Those are your like that's a red flag. Definitely.
Mine is. Like if they're wearing a Ed Hardy T-shirt, that's up there as far as douche meter.
I mean, I mean, it'd be pretty funny to see some dudes in Ed Hardy shirts trying to storm the Capitol. But I would put that farther down
with bedazzled jeans.
I prefer my officers of the law not to be wearing Confederate flag gear.
I would prefer. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, if I knew a guy was a cop, here in my hometown, and I saw him wearing a Confederate flag T-shirt, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't feel great about it.
Yeah, I'm like, a really interesting book that's got nothing to do with comic books that I finished reading. Like, I had literally finished this book last weekend. It's by a professor at the University of Chicago. It's called Bring the War Home, and it's all about white supremacy and white nationalism since like the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. It's extremely. There's not a chapter about the Punisher logo yet, but I can see the threads of it starting to all pull together. But I mean, it sucks, right? Like you don't want.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Can I ask you a question about that book? Because did she bring up anything about the program for the Vietnam War that they instituted in regards to like desensitizing soldiers?
Well, they most of the book is takes place like how after the Vietnam War, returning soldiers came home, and it was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, and how the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan and how they actually sort of started to work together with neo-Nazis, and how those groups used to be.
Say why that
Well,
happened?
it was mostly there's a large thread of people who felt like the Vietnam War was a failure, like a weakness of the country, and like a betrayal of.
So they needed to show
like my strength.
overcompensation.
I'm strong, and a lot of the growth of it started attacking Vietnamese immigrants, like Hmong immigrants from Vietnam that we brought over to the U.S. because they helped us during the war, and we brought them here because North Vietnamese. But they were actually targeted by a lot of these groups who felt like they're still fighting communism in the United States. Like the war never ended, Well,
it's interesting. The first thing I thought about, I don't remember. It was a book I read about it, and it was part of it was about how if you look at like firing rates by soldiers by war, they started to like analyze data, and they like in World War I, or like 1 out of every 10 soldiers would actually fire at a target, and the rest of them would like fire over because they didn't want to kill anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then like World War II, it was a little less, and then Korea, and then they got to Vietnam, and they realized like most soldiers, because most normal human beings don't want to murder another person that they don't even know. Like that's just like in our nature. We're not actually psychopathic killers. It actually turns out our nature is to not murder other people. So what the Army did and the Marine Corps did is they started instituting programs to dehumanize the enemy and desensitize soldiers so that they would fire. And the firing rates in Vietnam went way up. And this program to actually, and so it would make sense, like after that, they would come home and still look at anyone that wasn't them as the enemy, as an,
It's a great book. I mean, it's about 240 pages, and it kind of goes through the 80s through like the Oklahoma City bombing sort of is the end point of her narrative of like all this stuff building up through, like the stuff like Ruby Ridge and those things and all that stuff that sort of slowly built
Waco
up to that. But it's a very timely read, which I think is like a very it's called Bring the War Home by Catherine Ballou. She's like as a professor at University of Chicago.
That shithole.
Not a comic, guys. There's very few pictures.
Oh, forget it.
I know it's gonna be hard. It doesn't even have like the section in the middle with a bunch of pictures in it, where you're like, it doesn't even have that. It's like straight up words.
Forget it.
Black and white pictures.
That era and comic book characters. I mean, this is not the first time that a comic book character has been used. The symbolism of characters by folks. It's you read all the time about like Doctor Strange and the Hulk were symbols that the counterculture used in the 1960s. They gravitated to those characters as as counterculture symbols, and wear Hulk patches on jackets and that kind of stuff. So I mean,
there are a bunch of dorks,
stinking hippies,
a bunch of dorks wearing a Doctor Strange. God damn.
So, I mean, not Punisher's not the only comic book character out there that groups have kind of gravitated towards to kind of appropriate them as symbols of a movement.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I like Tom was saying, I get the frustration people have with it because it's like, well, I don't want to be associated with that element of, doing those kind of things. But I just don't see that like creating this problem for Marvel is really a solution in any way. It's not like I don't see it solving any problems. Like, what is the actual problem it's solving other than, you know, a couple, 100 people feel better about it? And is that,
if Marvel comes out tomorrow and says we're going to cease the production of all Punisher properties, comic books, TV show, movies, are those people going to rip their Punisher patches off their store-bought fatigues, that they got?
They're going to double down. They're going to double down on it. They're just going to be like, well, now it's ours alone.
Yeah.
I think Neil Johnson says I would still drive the General Lee.
Problematic.
It is, but it's a badass car. I don't know. It's still
Trump can start his own comics line of just like characters. He can buy the Punisher.
They all murder.
He can.
I think there's a lot of out of work comic book creators. Sign up for the Trump line of comics.
Trump comics.
I think what's his name Ethan Van Sciver will be first in line.
Yeah,
he could publish his
bankrupt
shitty frog comic, whatever the fucking bizarre frog comic that he fucking
recall it. Pepe the frog now.
Pepe the frog, cyber frog.
Trump would never publish that. Not hot enough. Where the hot ladies?
Too French.
Yeah, what is this? Some robot frog? Sad.
I don't know. I just think. I mean, I'm not, like I said, cops and that kind of thing, putting it on their uniforms or cars, absolutely go after them, stop them from doing it. Like, if you live in a town where your police officers have Punisher logos on the car,
or wear Confederate shirts.
Yeah.
If somebody's wearing a Confederate shirt in their, whatever, I don't really like. Okay, cool. I don't have to like everything everyone does.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like half the band shirts you wear. So, like, what?
Awesome.
But I think we're at this point where it's just like, well, I can't do anything about this problem. I can't really solve this problem. So I'm just going to take my frustration out on a corporation that I actually like. I don't know.
Here's the thing. What if they were wearing like My Little Pony patches?
But I mean, they wouldn't, because My Little Pony's not cool.
What if they were?
Ooh, the bronies are going to come after me for that one. What if they were wearing, what
if they were wearing Big Bird patches from Sesame Street?
Would you go after HBO to shut them down? Like
you need to get rid of Big Bird as a character. And I know that Big Bird is not the Punisher, and I understand. Yeah,
it's a false equivalency. I mean, Punisher does kill people. I mean, the Punisher is problematic in a superhero world, and a company like Marvel and a company like Disney.
There's the problem.
It's problematic.
Right there, is what do we refer to the Punisher comics as? They're superhero comics. That's part of the problem. They're not superhero comics. It's
right
comics, and they're no longer. I mean, comics are. You guys know this. We all know this. Comics are much more complex and complicated than that.
Comics aren't just for kids anymore.
Their comics aren't for kids anymore. Bang pow.
Well, that's like, I bet more people in the general population think that Superman kills because of that shitty Superman movie.
Oh, for sure.
Then, because they don't read the comics and they don't so I bet more people out there think that Superman is happy to snap someone's neck.
We talked to whenever DC leaked that DC was going to kill Dick Grayson, and there were, thousands of people that were outraged because they were going to kill Robin.
They're doing it again.
It hadn't been Robin in like 25 years.
There's a choose your own adventure animated movie thing out. I can't think of the name of it, but it's a Batman one, and like, it's a choose your own adventure, and the first choice is does Dick live or die? I think is the first.
It's not Jason Todd this time.
Oh, maybe it's Jason Todd. I don't know which one it is. It's one of them.
Oh, 1-800
That's the first choice
to vote.
Yeah. Click here to vote. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I mean, I really enjoyed like all the Garth Ennis Punisher stuff that he did, but that was Marvel Max. It was their, it wasn't in. And I never looked at the Punisher as a hero. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Disney fascist. Which Punisher are you referencing? Are you referencing?
Yes, yeah. Is this the
Jerry
movie
Conway
Punisher?
Which Punisher run is your favorite?
Let's just start questioning fascists.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to take that patch from you.
I'm sorry.
If you don't answer these
nerd
3
card.
questions.
Yeah, your Punisher card's getting revoked.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 29? I don't believe so.
I do actually.
Do you?
Yeah. Somewhere in a box.
Now might be the time to sell.
Yeah, right before. That's why I'm arguing the whole time. It's all my Punisher comics I don't want devalued.
What is your favorite Punisher story? You guys got one?
I mean, I still love the Zek, the original 4-series miniseries. I think is still groundbreaking in a lot of ways. Mike Zeck's art is fucking amazing, and just I had never seen a comic like from that perspective. Is like he's in jail and dealing with that whole thing. It was just sort of like mind blowing. I think that's awesome. The Garth Ennis, the stuff with Barracuda, I think is some of my favorite stuff for sure. There was that, Ennis did a long run, but he did that one storyline with the Russian mob that I think was
that was
fucking epic.
Yeah. Born I still think is a fantastic story.
I liked it when they made him a Frankenstein.
Frankencastle?
Yeah.
Frankencastle. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, people. That's like some of the suggestions are like, just make him gay and make him wear a unicorn skull or something.
Gay, or make him black. Make him black and gay.
But it's such
It's too late.
Yeah, it's not going to change anything.
They don't care. They just think it makes them look badass.
Yeah, that's all they give a shit about. It's badass. It's badass, dude.
If you changed it, they'd just be like, typical liberal pukes.
Snowflakes.
Yeah, but snowflakes can handle a strong white man murdering people.
It's also like, I wonder. I mean, I guess it's a safe assumption, but like, it's like, well, if you make them black, they would hate it. I was like, maybe. If you made them gay, they would hate. It's like there are no gay idiots. You know what I mean? Like there's no gay fascist morons out there. Like every gay guy is a fucking liberal. I don't know. Maybe. I doubt it.
Like I said, it's just like it's too late, man. That fucking genie's out of the bottle. That Punisher logo is just that's it. Like you can make it. I just Googled the Punisher logo and I found like 8,000 different horrible
variations of it.
Variations of it. I got an American flag one.
Have the American flag, like emblazoned on it.
Some with Trump's hair on it.
Oh Jesus!
Some with the Blue Lives Matter thing on it. One with Black Lives Matter, like with blood dripping down. Like, dude, it's gone. You lost it. The logo is now off into the ether. It's like untethered. It's untethered from reality, like many people are now. Where it's just like, Godspeed, Punisher logo. You have.
I know.
I didn't think
Jerry Conway tried to like reclaim it in some way. He did a benefit thing where, like, he was trying to ask people to recreate the logo, and they raised a bunch of money.
I get that. I get that. If you're, have you guys watched that documentary about the Pepe the Frog, the guy who made it?
Yeah, I a while back I watched it.
Like, I can get that if you've made something and it sort of becomes something you never intended it to be in an awful.
Oh, I'm sure that's got to be terrible for that dude.
Yeah, or like. I can see why Jerry Conway could be like, "Oh my god," you think about
the
like
last thing you wanted to,
Yeah, you're just making up a fucking comic book character. Like,
but that's the interesting thing. Like, if there's anybody that should be upset, it would be Jerry Conway, and he's not even calling for it to be, destroyed or eliminated, because you know what I mean. Like, who would be more upset than that guy? Of like, Jesus, they took something I made, and
like, my
tasered
God.
themselves to death in the balls with it.
On that note, all right, you two. We're trying to keep our episodes to about an hour, which we are at
all right.
an hour. So
Got to the good stuff. Ball
we want
taser.
to solve the world ills. Anyway, but real quick, remember contact the show info at aroundcomics.com. We
Yes.
now have a Patreon, which Sal, that is there.
Patreon.com/aroundcomics. You can also get to it from aroundcomics.com. All the links are there. And yeah, please help us out, support the show, give us some patronage. And there's going to be exclusive episodes on there. I'm going to do a weekly future stacks. Do you guys want to hear my future stacks? No,
Yes.
you don't want to. You don't want to hear it. It's too long. It's like 20 seconds long.
Oh, I love it.
It's terrible. But I did a future stacks like jingle, and I'm gonna do a future stacks episodes where basically every week I'm gonna look at the comics that are coming out that week and tell you what's gonna be good. It's the most ridiculous concept we've ever done, but yeah, that's well, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, that was the thing. No, but it's pretty ridiculous.
I'm going to do a weekly magazine format.
I'm not doing anything weekly on any level. I'm
Still,
not promising.
No, Tom, monthly. We're hoping for monthly.
Monthly.
But I'll tell you what, we've already had somebody signed up already, and they're like, all you had to say was Tom versus, and I'm there.
Yeah,
So,
you'll get monthly. Maybe
get a
more.
monthly. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome! People will love that, I'm sure.
I'm shooting for 2 interviews a month.
To interview them, I'm going to do the 4, weekly. But that's simple. I can do that. But I also have something else. I'm going to try and get together once a month where it's going to be a drawing contest, me versus professional artists that I will lose every week. But I'm going to stack the deck a little bit.
Call Van Sciver.
I'll call Ethan Van Sciver, and we'll have a nice
frog off.
No, I'm gonna try and get that together. I want to do a little thing where it's short little contest, me versus actual artists. But
I'll be good. I think
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
It's like,
and then we give your sketches away as Patreon gifts.
Absolutely, you can. Well, I was gonna do it digitally, but nobody's gonna want my terrible sketches. But,
we could start. We can release our version of what was the trucker comic we came up with? Us Two.
Was that what it was? Us Two.
US One.
US Two.
And the truck is the one that's controlling the person.
Yes,
it needs the person to like get around
the
world. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. No one steal that.
Devil's Highway trade paperback comes out in a couple weeks.
We are gonna have lots of fun bonus material on the Patreon. You can only get it if you are a Patreon member. There's different levels you can subscribe to. Please, we would really appreciate it. We want to do this. Not we've run this podcast for years and years and years. We never wanted ads. We never wanted your money, take your money. And this weekly show is going to be the same. It's always been. There's no difference.
You're still getting the good center cut.
Yeah. This is just extra stuff. Hopefully people will like it, and we can raise a little money and maybe do some fun things with it, whether it's the 3 of us maybe actually being in the same place at the same time once in a while, or
you guys are gonna drive.
Tom's like, I'm not into that.
No one ran that one by me. No.
I don't agree with that.
It's nice of you guys to drive to Milwaukee.
I'll fly. I'm gonna fly on a helicopter. I'm using that Patreon cash. I'm taking a helicopter. Me and Tom are going in style.
Nice.
Get in the chopper.
So that's the rundown on Patreon. Once again, we love hearing from listeners. Send those emails. Give us some subjects to talk about.
I got an email. Yeah, you want me to?
Email.
I do have an email. Hold on a second.
We'll run over 10 minutes.
Quick.
Come on, relax. Don't be such a Nazi.
Yeah. Make fun of my Punisher shirt.
Please don't take any of our logos and make them a fascist symbol.
Please don't appropriate us.
Please don't do that. Oh my.
This is from Wes A. He said, "Hi guys, hope you're doing well. I was recently reading Godzilla: Half-Century War by James Stokoe, and it got me thinking about licensed comics. The majority of some publishers' slate, like IDW and Boom, is just licensed comics. I was curious if there were any licensed comics that you guys really liked. Do you think it's possible that licensed comics can serve as a gateway for non-comics readers? Curious what you guys think about this."
For sure.
Yeah.
I really like the Planet of the Apes comics that Gabriel and Sarah Karina Becco did. Yeah, out of recent history. I thought those were awesome. I mean, if you want to talk about weird thing about licensed comics, you can get some weird shit. Like Sholey's Transformers versus G.I. Joe. That stuff was awesome and freaking weird. It was great.
Well, shit, your first comic ever was a licensed comic.
My first comic ever was a Doctor Who comic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think I like some of the Alien versus Predator stuff that has always come out. I kind of enjoy that. Anything Alien, I think, is done pretty well.
G.I. Joe. You want to talk about a gateway
Well,
comic?
yeah.
G.I. Joe.
Star Wars.
Tons of people.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The new Star Wars stuff that Marvel is doing now is really good. Out of it,
it's good.
You know?
Yeah, I mean it has like, it doesn't have that sort of, you know, the bad rap that sometimes licensed comics gets. Is it's just like, just talk whatever.
The Rick and Morty
like,
stuff. The Rick and Morty stuff.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
It's really funny. It's really
the Adventure
good.
Time comics.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Hillary Barda.
Simpsons,
How long?
Treehouse of
Simpsons.
Horror.
Yeah, I was gonna say Treehouse of Horror, Simpsons.
Our buddy Hillary Barda's been doing, SpongeBob.
I would hope that it would be gateway. I would hope that people would maybe pick up some of that stuff that they like the licensed of, and then and then move on to other comics. But I don't know. I don't know if people are.
It used to be. I think that they would just throw garbage creators on it, like pay the smallest amount possible. But I think that they don't do that anymore.
Are you talking about all the Devil's Due guys like Tim Seeley and Mike Norton?
No, I'm not talking about Tim and Mike. But I think that the talent pool is a lot deeper with aspiring writers and artists, and so I think a lot of those IP comics are a lot better than they were like 15, 20 years ago.
I agree.
I think a lot of those licensed comics have more cultural cachet than the non-licensed comics do these days.
Yeah.
The difference between what it was like in 1981 versus,
right
now, where it's like that gap where it's like, oh, I guess we'll publish this Star Wars comic,
it's also weird, like the amount of nostalgia, everything is being rebooted and redone and brought back. And so that really, I think, plays into the comics world too, of like, you have this audience that is in their 40s and 50s, and it's like, oh, you're going to do a Cobra Kai comic, because the show's popular now, or you're going to do there's Stranger Things comic books, and that's all very retro.
Buffy comics were good.
Buffy comics, yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting kind of like market, but I don't know. I don't know what the crossover is like. I don't know if you get people that read that stuff and then go, oh, I'm going to try, a Punisher comic. and or
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I mean, because also in some sense, the licensed comics always pale on some level.
Yeah,
they're not the A level, right? Like they're like, oh, if you want more, go see this. But even if they're extremely well done, right? They're not the TV show,
and they're usually finite. They're finite because of the popularity of a show or a movie or whatever, and so they're around for 6 months and then they're gone usually. So,
at this point, are like all mainstream comics licensed products?
Pretty much,
I mean,
where does one end and where does the it's like Umbrella Academy, is that a license?
Well, that's what I mean, like, but just like anything from Marvel, the movies are way bigger than the comics. So technically, are they now, licensed?
Essentially, kind of, yeah.
Kind of, right?
I mean, at least
Yeah.
culturally, they're not the.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. The cycle whenever you start seeing the comics emulating the movies, the characters start looking like the actors. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's because Greg Horn was drawing them all. Sorry, it was an unnecessary shot at Greg Horn.
Unnecessary, sir. Unnecessary. All right. Around Comics listeners, we love you.
Oh,
we understand you.
We sympathize with you.
We sympathize with you. You're one of us. We will look for that Patreon stuff. We appreciate it. Like I said, we'll be here every Tuesday, so you get the Center Cut episode, and we'll be back next Tuesday. And in the meantime,
in between time,
we'll be everywhere in
and around comics. Comics.